She was tracing circles on the fogged-up glass of the passenger window. Her hand was shaking. "I'm late, Sam," she whispered, and the words just hung there in the cold air of the cab, heavier than a triple-axle load of steel. I looked past her, out into the rainy parking lot. Saw her minivan parked next to my rig. Saw the silhouette of the baby's car seat in the back. And my blood ran cold. The whole damn world seemed to shrink down to the space inside my Freightliner, to the sound of her ragged breathing and the frantic thumping of my own heart. The whole thing started the way trouble always does on the road, with a text message. A little green bubble on my phone, glowing in the dark of my sleeper berth. I was parked up for the night at a pilot off I-40 in Arkansas. One of those places you've been to 1,000 times, smells like diesel and burnt coffee and the kind of quiet desperation that seeps into the concrete. Rain was coming down in sheets, drumming a nervous rhythm on the roof of the cab, each drop a tiny hammer against the metal. It's a sound that can either be a lullaby or a war drum, depending on what ghosts you've got riding shotgun. Tonight, it was drums. I'd just finished a plate of microwaved Salisbury steak that tasted more like the plastic tray it came in than actual food. That's dinner for a king out here. A hot meal you didn't have to cook yourself. You learn to appreciate the small victories. I was staring at the folded, worn picture of a woman I once knew in Montana, her smile a ghost from a different life, when the phone lit up. The picture was creased right across her face. I'd folded and unfolded it so many times over the years it was soft as cloth. Her name was Anna. She wasn't a waitress or a lot lizard, she owned a small bookstore in Missoula. A whole world away from this life. I'd been laid over for a week waiting on a new transmission, and I'd wandered into her shop just to get out of the cold. It smelled like old paper and cinnamon tea. She had eyes the color of the sky right before a snowstorm, and she talked about books like they were old friends. For 7 days, I wasn't a trucker. I was just a man drinking tea with a woman who made him forget the road existed. On the last day, she'd asked me to stay. Just like that. "You don't have to drive away," she'd said, her hand on my arm. "You could just stop." The look in her eyes was an anchor, and I was a ship built for the open sea. I kissed her goodbye at dawn, the taste of her cinnamon tea still on my lips, and I put the hammer down. I've been running from that memory for a decade, but it always catches up to me in the quiet moments. Staring at her picture, I felt that old, familiar ache, the phantom limb of a life I'd cut off myself. That's when the phone buzzed, pulling me back to the sticky reality of Arkansas. The text just said, "Are you in town?" It was from Chloe. My thumb hovered over the screen. I knew, with the kind of gut certainty that keeps you from jackknifing on black ice, that I should have just turned the phone off. Rolled over and let the hum of the reefer unit sing me to sleep. Chloe was complicated. She was 24, maybe 25, but her eyes held the kind of weary knowledge you see in women twice her age. A tired beauty, worn smooth by life's hard edges. I'd see her working the counter at the Greasy Spoon next to the truck stop, the Dixie Darling Diner. She moved with an efficiency that bordered on exhaustion, refilling coffee cups and wiping down counters in a world that was permanently sticky. She'd always give me an extra slice of bacon, slide my plate across the counter with a quick, tired smile that didn't quite reach her eyes but still managed to make me feel a decade younger and a hell of a lot more foolish. It was a conspiratorial little gesture. Our secret. Me and her against the world of lukewarm coffee and grumpy four-wheelers. We'd talked. At first, it was nothing. The kind of talk that fills the empty space between ordering and paying. The weather, the price of fuel, the sorry state of the Razorbacks football season. Standard issue diner chatter. You build up a tolerance for it, a thick callus over the part of your brain that craves real conversation. You talk about nothing because talking about something, anything that matters, is dangerous. It's an investment. And out here, you learn not to invest in things you can't haul away with you. Then, one slow Tuesday afternoon, the place was empty except for me and an old-timer nursing a cup of tea. The rain was hammering down just like tonight. She was leaning against the counter, staring out the window at the gray sheet of water turning the parking lot into a lake. "Looks like it's never gonna stop," I'd said, just to say something. My voice sounded loud in the quiet diner. She didn't look at me. Good. Maybe it'll wash the whole damn town away. There was no heat in it. Just a flat statement of fact, like she was announcing the daily special. That's when she told me. About her baby boy, Joey. About his father, some local football hero who'd thrown the winning touchdown in high school and had been coasting on it ever since. A guy named Ricky. He'd given her a kid and a string of broken promises before vanishing into the next county, leaving nothing behind but a name on a birth certificate she couldn't even get him to sign. She wasn't crying when she told me. She said it like she was reading a grocery list: bread, milk, eggs, soul-crushing abandonment. That's what got to me. The complete and total absence of self-pity. She'd boxed up all that pain and put it on a shelf, just another chore she had to deal with. She spoke of her own life with the detached air of a dispatcher reading a load order. It was just a series of unfortunate events, a route she was stuck on. My phone was still glowing. My thumbs, clumsy and thick from gripping a steering wheel for 20 years, typed back. Yeah. Parked up at the pilot. Row G. I could feel the pulse in my neck, a slow, heavy beat. This was a bad idea. Every instinct, honed by 2 million miles of avoiding trouble, was screaming at me. But loneliness is a powerful thirst, and she was a glass of cold water in the middle of the desert. The 3 little dots appeared, then vanished. Appeared, then vanished again. A digital hesitation. My heart was thumping a slow, heavy beat against my ribs. Finally, the reply came through. Can I see you? Mom has the baby for a couple hours. I just need to get out. That's the hook. That's the line that'll reel in any man who's ever felt the 4 walls of his own life closing in. I just need to get out. It's the unofficial motto of this whole damn country. Every person stuck in a job they hate, a town they can't leave, a life they didn't choose. They all just need to get out. And my Freightliner Cascadia, my home, with its 500 horses and a full tank of diesel, it's the ultimate getaway car. A rolling symbol of escape. Even when it's sitting dead still in a rainy parking lot in Bumfuck, Arkansas. It promises a horizon. That's its power. I wrote back, my own moment of weakness, my own surrender. Doors unlocked. That was 3 months ago. And it became a thing. A ritual. Once, maybe twice a month, whenever my dispatch route swung me down through Arkansas, my phone would light up. She'd wait until her mom was settled in with the baby, then her little blue minivan, with its cracked windshield and mismatched hubcap, would slip into the spot beside my rig. A silent little ship pulling alongside my steel island. The first time she climbed into my cab, she moved like she was entering a church. She just sat there in the passenger seat, her hands in her lap, looking around at my whole life spread out in 10 square feet. At the worn-out seat covers, the dog-eared road atlas on the dash, the faded picture of my old blue-tick hound, Duke, tucked into the sun visor. She ran a delicate hand over the polished knob of the 13-speed gear stick, its surface worn smooth by a million shifts. "It's so quiet," she'd said, her voice barely a whisper. The air smelled of her, a mix of diner grease and some cheap vanilla perfume that somehow smelled like heaven to me. "Quieter than a crying baby, I guess," I said, trying for a joke. She laughed, but it was a sad, brittle sound. "You have no idea. That night, we just talked. 4 hours. It felt like a confession. She told me about her dreams of being a dental hygienist. A life of clean tools and steady paychecks, a world away from wiping down sticky tables. She described the clean, white office, the polite patients, the feeling of fixing something, of making things clean and whole. It was such a small, decent dream, and it felt a million miles away from where she was. I found myself telling her things I hadn't told anyone. Not even my ex-wife. I told her about the time I saw the northern lights over a frozen lake in Montana, how the sky looked like it was on fire and I felt so small, so completely insignificant, but in a good way, like the universe was reminding me that my own problems were just tiny specks of dust. I told her about my dad, how he taught me to drive in an old Peterbilt, how he said the road talks to you if you learn how to listen. I even told her about Duke, my old hound, and how he used to sit in the passenger seat and howl along with the sad songs on the radio until the day he got too old for the road. The stories just poured out of me, a river of words I didn't know I was holding back. It was innocent. It was easy. It was the most dangerous thing I'd done all year. A couple of weeks later, my route brought me back. The text came right on schedule. That time, she showed up with a paper bag. "Brought you dinner," she said, climbing in and shutting the door against a cold wind. "Figured you were sick of that microwave garbage." Inside was a thick slice of meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans from the diner. Real food. She'd brought a fork wrapped in a paper napkin. We sat there, side by side, the dome light casting a warm glow, and ate in comfortable silence. It felt domestic. Perilously so. The simple act of sharing a meal in my cab felt more intimate than anything I'd done in years. It was a little bubble of normal life floating in the weird, transient world of the truck stop. I watched her eat, the way she carefully separated her peas from her potatoes, and I felt a pang of something I couldn't name. It wasn't just lust. It was a dangerous, tender feeling. This was no longer just a flirtation over a counter. This was something else. Something with roots. It didn't stay that way. You can't live on a diet of just talk and meatloaf. The road is a lonely place. It's not the driving that gets to you, it's the stopping. The endless nights in identical truck stops, surrounded by 1,000 other people but utterly alone. The hum of the engines becomes your only company. The faces you see are just reflections in a window, they're 1 second and gone the next. You start to crave a connection. Any connection. A hand to hold for a minute. A voice that knows your name and doesn't follow it with a load number. The next time she came, the air in the cab was different. Thicker. Charged. The easy conversation was gone, replaced by a heavy silence that buzzed with unspoken things. She didn't talk as much. She just watched me with those old eyes of hers. I was drinking a lukewarm coffee, staring out at the endless parade of headlights on the interstate, feeling her gaze on me like a physical touch. She reached over, her movements slow and deliberate, and took the cup from my hand, setting it carefully on the dash. Then her fingers, cool and smelling faintly of bleach from cleaning the diner, brushed the old, faded scar on my jaw. "How'd you get this?" she asked, her voice low and husky. It sent a shiver right down my spine. "Bar fight. Amarillo. Long time ago." The story was longer and uglier than that, involving a cheating poker game and a man with a broken bottle, but it was the short version. The one I used when I didn't want to remember the feeling of glass against my skin and the coppery taste of my own blood. She didn't pull her hand away. Her thumb traced the line of the scar, a gentle, questioning touch that felt more intimate than a kiss. And I didn't move. I just sat there, frozen, feeling the warmth of her skin against mine, a current running from her fingertips straight to my chest. That's how it starts. The silence gets loud. You can hear your own heartbeat in your ears, a steady, hammering drum. The space between two people, that safe, respectable distance, shrinks until it's gone completely. Until you can feel the heat coming off their skin and smell the scent of their hair. She leaned across the console, over the gearshift and the CB radio. The cab of a Freightliner isn't built for romance. It's all hard plastic and sharp angles, a machine built for work, not for tenderness. But in that moment, it was the only world that existed. A small, dark bubble against the rainy night. Her eyes, dark and deep, locked with mine for a long second that stretched into an eternity. Her breath hitched. Then she disappeared below the dashboard. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, my breath catching in my throat. I stared out the windshield at the neon sign of the Dixie Darling Diner, its cartoon waitress winking on and off, a broken, flickering promise. The rain lashed against the glass, blurring the world outside into abstract streaks of light and color. The air in the cab got heavy, thick with the smell of her perfume and the unspoken desperation that had brought us here. The gentle rocking of the cab on its suspension was no longer from the wind. It was the kind of payment you don't declare on your taxes. The kind of transaction that costs you more than money, a debt you carry with you long after the goods have been delivered. It became our ritual. A desperate, hurried thing in the dark. A secret whispered between the rumble of my engine and the hiss of air brakes from the truck next door. The sleeper cab rocking gently on its chassis, the windows fogging up, hiding us from the judging eyes of the world. The only sound was the constant hum of the reefer and the ragged sound of our breathing. It wasn't about love. I'm too old and broken to believe in that particular fairy tale anymore. My divorce had cured me of that. It was about forgetting. For an hour, maybe two, she could forget she was a single mom in a dead-end town with a broken-down minivan. And I could forget I was a 42-year-old man whose only permanent address was a post office box and whose only real home had 18 wheels and a lien on it. We built a fragile little world in that cab. I started looking for excuses to get dispatched through Arkansas, telling my dispatcher the fuel was cheaper or the route was smoother. Lies. I'd buy her little things. A paperback novel from a dusty shelf at a TA. A bag of the fancy coffee she liked from a shop in Nashville. A silver necklace with a tiny star on it that I bought from a Navajo woman at a rest stop in Arizona. Stupid little things that felt important. Things that started to feel dangerously like courtship. One night, her ex-boyfriend, the local hero, Ricky, showed up at the truck stop. We were in the cab, the curtains drawn. I saw his truck pull in, a big, lifted Ford with obnoxious lights that swept across the lot like a prison searchlight. He stomped into the diner, and a minute later, he came storming back out, yelling her name. Chloe went pale. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin so hard I knew it would leave marks. Oh God, Sam, it's him. He can't find me here. He'll kill me. He'll kill you. The pleasure of our secret turned to pure, cold fear in a heartbeat. The shift was so fast it gave me vertigo. This wasn't a game. This was real, and it had teeth. I shoved her down onto the floor between the seats, then scrambled into the sleeper berth, pulling the heavy curtain shut. I killed every light in the cab, even the tiny LEDs on the dash. We were plunged into absolute darkness, not breathing, listening. We heard his boots crunching on the wet gravel, getting closer. The sound was menacing, each step a hammer blow. Heard him yelling her name again, his voice thick with rage and entitlement. A fist hammered on the cab door of the truck parked next to mine. A muffled voice shouted back, something angry. Then the footsteps moved on, closer to us. The beam of a powerful flashlight cut through a tiny gap in my curtains, sweeping across the sleeper. I held my breath, my body tensed, ready to fight. The light passed. Then, his knuckles rapped hard on my passenger side window, 3 sharp cracks that sounded like gunshots in the silence. My blood turned to ice. Chloe let out a tiny, choked whimper, and I clamped my hand over her mouth. We sat in that suffocating darkness for what felt like an hour, listening to the sound of my own heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. After a while, we heard his truck roar to life and peel out of the lot, tires squealing on the wet pavement. She started crying then, silent, terrified sobs in the dark. I held her, my hand stroking her hair, my own fear slowly turning into a cold, hard anger at the man who could do that to her, who could treat her like a piece of property he'd misplaced. That night changed things. The thrill was gone, replaced by a constant, low-grade dread. Our little sanctuary had been breached. The real world, in all its ugliness, had found us. The game was over. But you can't forget forever. The real world always finds a way to kick the door in. Which brings me back to tonight. The drumming rain. The shaking hand on the window. The minivan with the empty car seat just a few feet away, a silent accusation. I'm late, Sam. The hum of the engine, usually a comforting rumble, suddenly felt like a roar. The cab, which had been a secret sanctuary, a fortress, now felt like a cage. The walls were closing in. I looked at her. Really looked at her. The dark circles under her eyes were deeper than I'd ever seen them. Her lips were chapped and pale. The fear in her eyes made her look even younger than she was, like a lost kid who'd wandered onto the interstate. Late for what? I asked, my voice coming out gravelly. I was stalling. Playing dumb. But I already knew. God help me, I knew the second the words left her mouth. The road gives you a sixth sense for trouble. You can smell it coming, like ozone before a lightning strike. It's a vibration in the air, a wrongness in the way someone looks at you. You know. She couldn't even look at me. She just stared at her own shaky, distorted reflection in the fogged-up glass, as if she was talking to herself. My period. The word landed in the silence like a dropped wrench. It's never late, Sam. Not ever. Not since Joey. The four-letter words, the curses, the denials, they all piled up behind my teeth, a logjam of panic, but none of them could get out. I just sat there, the diesel engine rumbling under us, a mechanical heartbeat counting down to something I didn't want to face. My mind was racing, spinning its wheels in the mud. A baby. Her baby, Joey, was safe with his grandma a few hundred yards away in some small, warm house. A real kid with a real life. And now, maybe another one. A new life. A life that was half me. A tiny, microscopic chain being forged in the dark, linking me to this town, to this girl, forever. A son or a daughter I'd never know. A child support payment mailed from a different truck stop every month. Another ghost to ride shotgun with me on these long, dark highways, its invisible face staring out at the endless white lines. The ghost of a choice I'd have to make. The ghost of a person I might have been. I took one of those cheap tests from the dollar store this morning, she said, her voice cracking, pulling me out of my spiral. After my shift. I did it in the bathroom at the diner. I had to hide in the stall and wait. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold it. Her story came out in ragged bursts. It had a line, but it was faint. So faint I thought I was imagining it. I don't know if it was real. I threw it in the trash so fast, buried it under a pile of paper towels. I felt like a criminal. I need to get one of the good ones. The digital ones. The ones that just say the word so you can't pretend. She finally turned to face me. The dam broke. Tears were streaming down her face now, silent and hot, cutting clean paths through her foundation. What am I gonna do, Sam? The question was a raw wound. It wasn't asking for advice, it was a plea for a miracle. I can't do this again. Not again. My mom, she helps with Joey, but she told me, Chloe, not again. I saw you with that truck driver, she said. I see his rig parked there. Don't you dare come home with another mouth to feed. I can't do it again. I'm barely making it as it is. My tips from the diner, my share of the rent, it's not enough. God, Sam, I can't have another baby. She was sobbing now, these ugly, raw, gut-wrenching sounds that tore right through the armor I'd spent 20 years building around myself. She wasn't a temptation anymore. She wasn't a warm body or an escape from loneliness. She was just a terrified kid, trapped in a life she didn't ask for. And I was the one who'd helped spring the trap. I was the one who'd left the door open and watched her walk right into it, smiling that tired, beautiful smile. I thought about my life. 2 million miles of asphalt stretching out behind me like a black scar on the face of the country. 1,000 lonely nights spent staring at the ceiling of a sleeper berth. A divorce that took half my savings and all of my faith in the idea of forever. My ex-wife, Sarah, her face came to me then, clear as day. The last fight we had, in the kitchen of the house I was never at. You're already gone, Sam, she'd screamed at me, her voice hoarse from crying. You're married to that damn truck, not to me. You spend your life running, but you don't even know what you're running from. I'd spent 2 decades running from anything that felt like a chain. A mortgage. A 9 to 5. A family. A reason to have to come home. I'd glorified my freedom, telling myself it was a noble choice, the call of the open road. But sitting here, with this terrified girl crying in my passenger seat, her problem now my problem, it felt a lot more like a prison sentence. A self-imposed exile. And now, here it was. The one chain you can't outrun. A chain made of flesh and blood, reaching for me in the dark. I could do what Ricky did. The easy thing. I could give her $50 and a pat on the shoulder. I could put the hammer down, point my rig west toward the sunrise, and never look back. Change my route. Block her number. Delete her from my phone and my life. In a week, she'd just be another story I tell myself, another ghost in the rearview mirror. It would be so easy. The road is built for running away. It's what I do best. I could be in California before she even got the results of the second test. But I looked at her face, streaked with tears and cheap mascara, and I saw every mistake I'd ever made. Every person I'd ever let down. Every time I chose the easy way out instead of the right one. Road karma, my old man used to call it. He was a trucker, too. Drove a Peterbilt for 40 years. What you put out on the road, Sammy, he'd say, his voice raspy from a million cigarettes and a lifetime of yelling over an engine. It always finds its way back to you. Might take a while. Might come at you from a direction you ain't looking. You cut someone off in Texas, you'll get a flat in Montana. You help a fella with a busted hose, you'll find the last parking spot at the end of a long day. It's the law of the road. It always comes back. My hand moved on its own. I reached into the glove box, my fingers pushing past the worn logbooks, the tire pressure gauge, the stale pack of emergency crackers. My fingers brushed against the smooth, cool metal of the silver necklace I'd bought her, the one she never wore, the one I never gave her. I pushed past it. I pulled out the wad of cash I keep tucked in the back. My get-out-of-jail fund. My running money. I'd started it after a bad wreck in Wyoming, a pileup on I-80 in a blizzard. I'd sat in my cab for 6 hours, watching them pull bodies out of cars, and I swore I'd always have enough cash on hand to buy a bus ticket to anywhere. A way out. My personal escape plan. I counted out $300. Fives, tens, 20s. Worn and soft from years of being folded up. It wasn't much in the grand scheme of things, but it was everything I had on me. It was my escape hatch. My freedom. I pushed the money into her hand. Her palm was damp and cold. Chloe. She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed and swollen, a deer in the headlights of my own making. Go by the good test, I said, my voice rougher than I wanted it to be. It felt like I was swallowing gravel. The expensive one. Get two, just to be sure. And whatever's left over, it's for whatever comes after. I couldn't bring myself to say the words. Doctor. Clinic. Bus ticket. It's for whatever you need. For you. She stared at the crumpled bills in her hand, then back up at me. I couldn't read her expression. Was it relief? Disappointment? Was she hoping for more? Did she want me to promise her something? To say I'd stay? To say I'd be a father? I saw the questions in her eyes, questions I had no answers for. I couldn't make those promises. Liars are the one thing I can't stand, and I wasn't about to become one tonight. The road had already taken enough from me, I wasn't going to let it take my last shred of honesty. I was a man who ran. That was the truth. And maybe the most honest thing I could do was give her the means to run, too. Or to stay. The choice had to be hers. She just nodded, a tiny, jerky movement. She wiped her eyes with the back of her other hand. She folded the bills carefully, with a strange precision, and tucked them deep into the pocket of her jeans as if she were hiding something precious. I have to go, she whispered. My mom's gonna kill me. She didn't kiss me goodbye. She didn't even touch me. She just unlocked the door and slid out into the rain, closing it softly behind her, like she was afraid to wake someone up. I watched her hurry through the downpour, a small, hunched figure under the buzzing, yellow-white parking lot lights. The door of the minivan opened and closed. A moment later, its red taillights cut two bleeding lines through the dark, swung out of the lot, and disappeared onto the service road. Gone. I'm still sitting here. The engine still running, a low, steady vibration I can feel in my bones. The passenger seat is empty, but I can still smell her perfume, a ghost of vanilla and fear. The window she was leaning on is still fogged over, except for the frantic little circles her finger made. They look like empty little worlds. Or maybe zeros. A whole row of them. The road gives, and the road takes. That's the first law of physics out here. Tonight, it feels like it's taken something I didn't even know I had. It gave me a few hours of warmth to get me through the cold nights, and in return, it left me with a ghost. A maybe ghost. A ghost with 2 pink lines. A ghost that might have my eyes. I should be getting some sleep. I've got a load of Tyson chicken that needs to be in a Phoenix distribution center in 2 days. Miles to burn. But I can't move. I turn the key, and the big Detroit diesel sighs into silence. The quiet is worse than the rumble. I can hear myself think. I get out, the cold, damp air hitting me like a slap. I walk over to the Dixie Darling Diner. It's dark, the chairs are up on the tables. The neon waitress is off for the night. I can see the spot by the coffee machines where Chloe always stood. I press my hand to the cold glass of the door. Nothing. I walk into the Pilot Travel Center. The light is too bright, the air thick with the smell of hot dogs that have been rolling for a week. I buy a coffee I don't want and stand by the window, watching the other drivers come and go. Men like me. Lonely, tired, always moving. I wonder how many of them are running from a girl in a town they can't forget. How many of them are waiting for a text message that could change everything. I go back to my truck. Back to my cage. I just keep staring at my phone, sitting dark and silent on the dashboard. Waiting. Waiting for a text that I hope to God never comes. And, in some broken, terrified part of my heart, praying that it does. Wondering what I'll do if it says, yes dash. Wondering what I'll do if it says nothing at all. The rain is finally letting up. The world outside is quiet. But in here, in the cab of my truck, it's the loudest it's ever been. And for the first time in 20 years, the open road doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like the biggest damn cage of them all.